This is the last time you're gonna see these tanks in this location because we're moving today to a brand new fish cave. Let's go. Funny story, guys. Today is moving day and I already recorded a dope intro and then I lost all of the footage, about 25 minutes of it. But luckily, I had a secondary camera going. So even though it might look like I'm not talking to you, I still am. Here we go. Before we start breaking down these tanks and heading over, I got the very first tip for you, which is dedicate an entire day to only moving your tanks. Don't move your couch and your fridge and your dressers all at the same time as your tanks. This needs its own specific day because you're gonna have a lot of moving parts. You're dealing with live animals and you don't wanna make any mistakes. Especially if you're moving big tanks like these or multiple tanks. If you only got a 20 gallon, okay, you can move that on the same day.
Well, that was easy, wasn't it?
We're talking big tanks, we're talking multiple tanks. Dedicate your whole day to it. Quick tip number 2 is make sure you plan for the entire day. You need to visualize everything that you're going to do throughout the day and make sure you have everything you need. I've got a bunch of equipment ready to go. I got a couple of totes. I got a whole bunch of air pumps and air stones. I got a bunch of buckets. I got my water change equipment, my water change pump. I've got everything that I need, including the truck is outside with moving blankets and dollies and everything. Make sure that you got everything you need before you start the process. You don't want to be in the middle of this move and then realize that you forgot something. Now, that doesn't mean that while I'm in the middle of my move that I'm going to have everything. Hopefully I do, but we'll see. Let's go. During this move, I'm going to keep 3 products handy at all times. Here at this location and at the new location, you already know it's going to be Chem. These are the 3: Prime, Stability, and Stress Guard. We'll get into more details about why I'm going to use them, how I'm going to use them, but these 3 should be handy at all times when moving big tanks with big fish to a new location. All right, time to start breaking these tanks down. The very first thing that I'm going to do is fill up my temporary totes with some tank water. Not because there's anything beneficial in the tank water. We should all know that already. There isn't any beneficial bacteria. It's full of nitrates, most likely. Not full, but it's got nitrates in it. The reason why we're using tank water in these temporary totes is because we're about to shock the fish all day long today. And by keeping them in their exact same water parameters that they're in their tanks, we're minimizing the stress. They can at least have one thing less to stress about by being in the same parameters that they're already in. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's get it. We're gonna keep the lights off during this whole process. Again, just to minimize the amount of stress these fish are gonna go through today. So while this tote is filling up with tank water, the first thing I'm going to add is some Chem Prime, just because there isn't going to be any beneficial bacteria in here. So when the fish go in here, they're going to start producing and accumulating a lot of ammonia in here. That's what the Prime is for. It's going to detoxify that ammonia and keep the water safe for the fish while they wait for me to move it. That's a 100-gallon dose. And this is about a 50-gallon tote. So I already double dosed it. I'm gonna give it one more. So it's got 4 times the Prime just to make sure that everything is good in here. Next, we're gonna add Stress Guard into this tote because obviously these fish are gonna be stressed getting netted, moving into here, being in a whole new location. Stress Guard is gonna make sure they stay calm and minimize their stress. 1 capful is good for 20 gallons of water. I added 5 capfuls. Give or take, doesn't have to be accurate as long as there's some Stress Guard in here. So this is more than enough water. The plan is that all the discus, the severums, the geos, everybody's going in the big tote except for Flaco the arowana and Scuba the stingray. Those 2 guys are getting their own individual totes. Why? Just because those 2 guys are very skittish and they seem to be more jumpy when they're stressed out. So I want to keep them on their own without everybody else. Now, these aren't the biggest totes in the world, but remember, this is a temporary move and I'm only going a block or 2 away. They're going to be quickly transferred right back into their tank. Okay?
Yeah.
One other reason for this small tote here is that this one comes with a cover. And when you're transporting an arowana, he absolutely will jump out of here. You need to have it covered to make sure he doesn't jump out. The discus, the severums, everybody else in the big tote, they're not jumping out of it. Yes, the big totes do come with covers as well, but I don't have one. So now that we got all of our temporary totes full of tank water, I'm gonna go ahead and finish draining this tank. At this point, while we start to drain the rest of the tank, filters go off and power goes off. You wanna make sure your heaters are off and you don't want your filters working when it's not necessary. So tank is drained down to about 80%. I'm gonna get ready and start removing the fish. But before I do, I wanna explain the different situations that people might be going through when they're moving. If you're moving, let's say states away into a different state, you might want to actually bag your individual fish and maybe even ship them to you wherever your new location is. If you're moving about an hour or so away, then you may wanna put all your fish into either one big tote or into separate buckets, smaller buckets, and make sure that you have good air surface agitation in your buckets. Make sure that you have heaters because your water temperature is going to drop while you're moving them. But in my case, that I'm only moving about a block or two away, I'm just gonna take my fish into separate buckets. I'm not gonna require a heater because they're going from indoors here to indoors there in about 5 minutes or less. But I am absolutely gonna have air stones in every single tote and in every single bucket. That is absolutely key. You should not move fish without air stones, a bubbler, a sponge filter, anything that can create surface agitation in your temporary buckets. Going for Flaco Dose first because he's already getting kind of jumpy and I don't want him landing on that piece of wood or hitting himself on the background. So we're gonna get him first, put him into the temporary tote. Let's go.
Run.
So that was crazy. Flaco Dose got away from me, but I was able to grab him, get him back into the tote. That shows you the power of an arowana, how high they can jump, how strong they are. We didn't have the lid on secure enough at the moment, and he took that second for the advantage to jump right out and pop out, but we got him back into there. I got the air stone going. I got the top clicked and secure, and I've now covered the tote with a towel to keep him in the dark so that as we walk around, we're not spooking him and we're not making him stress anymore. Now we're going for Scuba the second. I want to get him out and into his temporary tote first because I want those guys to just be there already. I don't want them to be stressed out while I'm trying to catch everybody else. In the temporary tote, towel covering the toe for the same reason as Flaco. Now let's go grab everybody else. Little face splash never hurt nobody. it looks like we got everybody out of the tank. Now I'm gonna go ahead and continue draining the rest of the water out of this tank and then try to get as much of that substrate out as we can. As the tank finishes draining, I'm going to start removing the FX6s. Now, you may think that it's beneficial to drain your FX6s completely to make them lighter for the move. That may be true and it may not be true. In my case, that I'm only moving a short distance away, I'm going to keep the filters completely full of water and chuck them over there as heavy as they are, because I want to make sure that I don't lose beneficial bacteria growing inside my filters. If you decide to drain your filters to make them lighter for your move, just know that you will most likely kill off the majority of the beneficial bacteria in your filters. So the choice is yours. If you are moving really far away, out of state, over an hour, and you have no choice but to drain your filters because you need to make everything as light as possible, then you need to understand that you're going to have to recycle your tanks. And you guys should know exactly how to recycle your tanks. If you don't, check that video out right there. I'll help you out. So I got as much water as I can out of here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start scooping up the substrate, hopefully taking some more water out. We gotta make this tank as light as possible for the move. When it's time to remove your hoses from the tank, even though your valves are closed, they should have been by now, you got to keep in mind that your hoses still have water in it. So don't just remove it from the back of the tank and throw it on the floor. All that water that's trapped between the valve and this end of your hose and that end of your intake as well are full of water. So keep that in mind.
What you're about to witness is a short episode of The Twilight Zone. This tank did not want to come unstuck from the stand. This was like a married pair. And this absolutely bothered me for the first 10 minutes of us trying to get it out. We angled it, we bobbled it, we shook it, we shaked it, we shanked it. We tried everything we could think of to get this thing to move. It was so stuck on the stand. We nearly tilted it completely forward, tilted it completely back. We began cutting some of the paint, I guess, that probably got stuck to the stand from the back, but that didn't do it. It was such a frustrating task trying to get this off. We tried big knives, we tried small knives, then we tried shaking it again, jiggling it again, manhandling the crap out of it, tilting it almost 45 degrees, and it would not slide off this stand.
See if you can stick the knife in there.
Listening to some crackling sounds, that was very scary, but shaking the crap out of this thing, trying to get it to break loose, and it would not. Breaking a dripping sweat trying to get this thing off. Mind you, it is winter. And all we could do was keep struggling at it. Shaking it, jiggling it, shimmying it, wiping sweat off my brow, cutting more around the tank as much as possible, trying to cut any kind of melted adhesive that could have gotten there, any kind of paint that could have stuck to the stand. This thing took a good while to get loose. Every time I thought I cut enough, I had to grab the knife and cut even deeper and harder, trying to get that knife in as much as I could without trying to peel the paint off the stand or damage the border around the tank. And still, this thing would not come off. I was really getting frustrated.
Do you want to take out some more water?
As it got hotter and hotter and I started sweating more and more, we kept at it. And we shook this thing to the point of where it should have fallen off the stand. And then we hear one crack, give it another good pull, and we hear another big crack. And finally she's loose. Unbelievable. Did not think that was gonna happen. But we got her off. Let's continue.
You got the nice tank, don't worry. Don't worry, you got the unload, don't worry.
That's some air tank. I'm gonna take these filters for you then.
Alright, be careful, I'm just a heavy, bro. That's what you need.
Oh!
Nothing, right? Like a breeze.
Not compared to the tank, yeah, nothing. So we got the tank out of the way and in the truck. Now we're gonna go ahead and take the fishes with us. The fishes, yes, fishes. I'm gonna add as many as I can in each one of these buckets. We're going to load the buckets up onto the truck that's already on and heated. And when we get to the new location, which is only 2 minutes away, the first thing we're gonna get out of the truck is the fish, put them inside the house where I already have the temperature set at around 75, 76, just so that they're in a warm room while they wait there while we set up the new tank. Let's get it. Buckets with fish, buckets with sand, tanks, filters. We're heading right over to the new spot and get these fish back into a warm place. Let's go.
Okay.
Got it?
Got it.
Take two. Pull the orange cord. Yeah. All right, now.
Ready? Let's go.
Before getting the tanks in here, I want to show you guys what the fish room looked like before I got my hands on it. As you can see, old, dirty looking carpet, dungy looking lighting. This was not the way my room was gonna be. So we got to work ripping up the floor right away. I don't even know what this stuff was made of. I got busy as soon as possible. Not really, just kidding. But I did have a lot of help, and we got the floor demoed quickly. We opened up some of the walls to check for insulation. We opened up the ceiling to start getting some new lighting and some new wiring up in there. And it turned out looking really good, really fast. We also got some water lines in the fish room because every good fish room should have a water source. We got the hot and cold lines running into a sink that I will be using for my water changes. Very easy, very accessible. There was tons of garbage to get rid of. No, this is not just from the fish room. We're also renovating the whole house. But
we are 99% done in here. This is what the room looks like before putting anything in it. As you can hear, it's still a big empty room, a lot of echo, but hopefully we take care of that once this room is full of tanks.
My latest poll said you guys wanted 2 videos, so make sure you subscribe so you guys can watch part 2, where I will be bringing all of my tanks here into the new fish room. As you can see, it's a blank white canvas ready for me to do anything I want to it. Stay tuned.